It's good to see you today. We're going to be looking in Esther today. Our hymn is called In God Will I Trust.
In God will I trust, though my counselors say, "Oh, flee as a bird to your mountain away." The wicked are strong, and the righteous are weak. Foundations are shaken, yet God will I seek.
Verse 2 The Lord in his temple shall ever abide, his throne is eternal, whatever betide. The children of men he beholds from on high, the wicked to punish, the righteous to try. The Lord is most righteous, the Lord loves the right, the evil he hates and will surely requite. The wicked his anger will drive from their place. The upright in rapture shall gaze on his face. In God will I trust. Appreciate it, Lee. You know, with these hymns, and you probably, you may recognize that tune. Um, and I recognize the tune, but I, of course, can't think of the hymn right now the tune that, or the hymn that we know it with. But this is how songs have been written down through the ages, where you may have tunes that were well known. The melody was well known. And so there would be a plethora of different songs written to that same tune down over the years. And so some of the more popular tunes, and this tune would have been one of the more popular ones. You can look online and you'll find a whole slew of songs written just to that tune. The reason they did that, it was so that people could sing the songs and not struggle with the music of it. Anyway, just thought I'd put that out there. To Esther, chapter 1. And we are in King Ahasuerus, as it speaks about. And if you're not familiar with Esther, Esther becomes queen because another queen, as Esther was, of course, a captive. And let's just look at it. We'll skim through it quickly to get to our points, but it begins with the queen, Vashti, basically not coming when the king calls. And that doesn't make the king very happy. And she is going to be deposed. And so after his wrath subsides, he issues a decree, and a new queen is going to be sought for. And young women, young virgins are brought, and preparations are made, and lo and behold, this is how Hadassah becomes the queen. And Hadassah is her Jewish name. Now, at the same time, or at that time, as it speaks about, there was, actually, we're not quite there yet. I don't believe. And so, at the end of chapter 2 is Mordecai discovering a certain plot against the king. That's going to come into play later, if you're familiar with the account. But then there's a man named Haman, and Haman plots to basically exterminate all the Jews. He is genocidal in his thinking. He is an Agagite. And so you might think about Agag. He's a descendant of Agag. And so it really wouldn't be that much of a surprise if he didn't have some animosity towards the Jews. If you're familiar with Agag, I believe Agag was the one that Samuel hacked to bits, if I recall correctly. Anyway, and so he is going to offer a sum of money, and he talks to the king about how horrible the Jews are, and sadly the king believes him. And so the decree is made, and on a certain day all the Jews are going to be killed. Chapter 4. When Mordecai learned all that had happened, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city. He cried out with a loud voice, cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went as far as the front of the king's gate, because no one could enter through the gate with sackcloth. And so here he is laying there. There's great mourning amongst the Jews, and Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her what was happening, with them fasting and weeping and wailing. And so they come and tell her, and the queen was deeply distressed. And then she sent garments to clothe Mordecai and take his sackcloth away from him. But he would not accept them. I think it's interesting because just on the surface it seems like, well, surely she knows what is happening. I would think she would know. I would think. And so we may come back to that here in just a moment, but she sins as here Mordecai is, and he's in sackcloth, and he's making a scene, frankly. And she sends garments to clothe Mordecai and take his sackcloth away. She's thinking that she's comforting him, I believe. But he would not accept them. And that's what I wanted to key in on. It's not the time for comfort. You know, sometimes when you are emotional, sometimes when you are frustrated, sometimes when you are in deep lament, sometimes when you yourself are in sackcloth and ashes, and someone comes by and, gives you a little pat on the shoulder and says, "Oh, come on there, fella, it'll be all right." And you want to quote what Job said to his friends. They didn't tell him it would be all right, by the way. They told him he was sinning. But anyway, I was just thinking of what Job said about his friends. You're a bunch of sorry comforters. Here, Mordecai does not accept what Esther gives. It's like it's not the time for comfort. It's like we need to be upset. We are in distress, and we are right to be in distress because we're all going to die, frankly. And I understand he talks about the remnant here in just a second, or he talks about how deliverance will come, I should say. But it's like we're right to be in distress. Don't pat me on the shoulder. Don't send your messenger out here and pat me on the shoulder and say they're there. It's like, no, there is a time to be distressed. And this is it. This is it. Back to the account. And so Esther calls one of the king's eunuchs to find out, to learn what and why this was. Maybe she didn't know. I don't know how she couldn't, but whatever. Maybe she didn't know, so she sends a message. She wants to learn what and what's going on. And so I guess it could be because genocide is kind of a touchy subject, so maybe Haman had tried to conceal it, keep it under wraps until it actually happens, perhaps. There may be verses that give more insight about that, but you can study that on your own. And so this servant goes out to Mordecai, and Mordecai told him all that had been happening and the sum of money and all of these things. He gave him a copy of the written decree for their destruction that was given at Shushan, so that he could show it to Esther and explain it to her, and so that he might command her to go into the king and make supplication to him and plead before him. And so Esther spoke to the servant and gave him a command, as these messages are going back and forth. And so the message is, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the king who has not been called, he has but one law: put all to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter, that he may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go into the king these 30 days. See, here Mordecai is saying, can you please use your influence for your people's good? And she's like, I haven't even seen him for 30 days. He hasn't called me. He hasn't called upon me for a month. I don't have any influence right now. I think it's basically what she's saying. Now, so they tell Mordecai's Esther words, and Mordecai told them to answer Esther, Do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. If you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And then, yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such time as this. I wanted to key in on that part in pink there. Mordecai says, don't think just because you're queen that you're going to escape this. Okay, he says, yes, deliverance will come. And it's like, oh, okay, that's a very hopeful sentiment. And it is a hopeful sentiment. And I'm not trying to downplay it. But in the same breath, he says, you and your father's house are going to perish. That's what's going to happen. Deliverance will come for the Jews, right? There will be a remnant that will be saved. But you and your father's house will perish in this. People will die, is what he's saying. And so he's saying, don't think in your heart, just because you're up there, that they're not going to get you too. And I was just thinking about the idea of don't trust in your position in life. Don't trust in riches. Don't trust in your own wisdom. Don't trust in your own prosperity. Don't trust in your own whatever it is. Don't trust in those things, right? Mordecai is speaking very plainly in this message that's going to be sent back to her. Don't think just because you're queen that you're going to survive this. Don't think that. This is serious, and it's going to affect you too. And so we need to take it to heart. You know, when we think about the church, we just have been going through Daniel, and we know the kingdom. We know the prophecy made about the kingdom, that it would go on forever. Now, does that mean that people can't fall away? Oh no, people can most certainly fall away. The kingdom will survive, but people can fall away. People can lose faith and suffer. You know, the New Testament talks about that, fall from grace. New Testament talks about that. Those who desire to be rich, you know, it talks about the phrase that it uses is basically a spiritual shipwreck. It's like, it can affect you. Don't think, don't trust. Let he who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. And so the message goes back. Don't think just because you are where you are that you'll be safe, because that's not what's going to happen. So she says, go gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me. Neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and so I will go to the king, which is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. And what I wanted you to see as we close out today is you trust in the Lord, right? She doesn't just say, okay, I'll go to the king. I'll do it. She says, you need to fast and pray. You need to get all the people together, and you need to fast for me. And I and my maids will do the same thing. We're going to fast for 3 days. We're not going to eat nor drink for 3 days. Okay, what this is pointing towards is you do your part. Esther says, I'll do it. But this ultimately depends on the Lord. And so we need to go to the Lord, and we need to plea and make our petitions to the Lord and trust in the Lord. If we just try to do this now, it's not going to work. You have to, I hate to say get the Lord on your side, because we're on the Lord's side, but I hope you understand what I mean. You know, it's been said, oh, what's the phrase? You work like everything depends on you, and you pray like everything depends on the Lord. I think that's somewhat of an oversimplification, but we say this: we are co-workers with the Lord. And so ultimately it's by God's grace, it's by God's mercy, but we still have to do our part. And so we work together. We have fellowship together. And so I appreciate that about this passage. I will go to the king, but before we do that, we need to do this. You remember with, was it Nehemiah, when the king says, "What troubles you?" And he prayed. I believe it says he prayed and then he spoke to the king. Do you remember in the New Testament when Saul and Barnabas are sent out? Do you remember what those brethren in Antioch did? They fasted and prayed, and then they sent them out. You might think about the same point in all those passages. Hope you have a good day. Appreciate you joining me. Join me tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.